On August 1st, young Nigerians started a 10-day nationwide protest tagged End Bad Governance, a demonstration aimed at the economic hardship and unfavorable policies of the current administration in the country. Starting on a good note, persons converged in different states carrying placards. However, the demonstration turned dramatic when some protesters, particularly in the northern part of the country, started waving the flag of a foreign nation, the Russian flag. A few days before the commencement of the protest, the United Nations Department of Safety and Security warned that the planned nationwide demonstrations might be hijacked by a group of persons with ulterior motives. This unexpected turn of events has sparked conversations about the display of the foreign flag and its implication for the country's politics and particularly security. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by Alex Okonkwo, as a security analyst. He joins virtually from Lagos, Nigeria, and also Terrace Kuanum is a special advisor to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation on Public Affairs. He joins virtually also from Abuja. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let me start off with you, Terrace. I mean, a lot has happened this past few days. But one of the issues that really stood out is the brandishing of the foreign Russian flag. Now, there were even, clips or videos of some of those protesters asking for the Russian president to intervene. Many have raised an eyebrow to this, particularly from a security perspective. My question to you is this. We know that some arrests have been made, but what's the update to that? And the implication of this, particularly on the security of the nation, because we also understand that there was intel prior to now.
Thank you very much for that question. As a government, we are going to follow the right channels to communicate with Nigerians concerning the issue of protesters using the foreign flag on our soil. The president is going to meet with the relevant agencies, and the government is going to make an official statement. But just like we said from day one, when this protest was being planned, we had already informed the youths that the idea of putting up a protest mostly is to get the attention of government. And fortunately, the government had given the protesters attention and had initiated the process of dialogue. And most of the issues that were raised by the protesters was being engaged with stakeholders, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, and community leaders. And that is why we had cautioned that going to the street to protest might be dangerous at the moment because people were going to hijack the protest. And we all witnessed how the protest was hijacked and how the dimension it turned into went even out of control of the people that conveying the protest. Yet the president has still called for dialogue so that the protest will end, so that the enemies of this country will not be able to come in and hijack the process. And so the president is open to dialogue, and we are ready to discuss because the future of this country belongs to all of us. And we are ready to sit as a government and be able to dialogue with anybody that has positive ideas that we can be able to move this country forward.
All right, let me leave you for a moment, to bring in, of course, my other guest. I mean, you've heard what Terrace said, but particularly I would like you to come in from a security angle. I would want to say maybe to a very large extent, this is almost the first of its kind. How much of security implication does this have for the country?
This is a very tricky one. As much as I respect what as much as I respect what the SA was saying, and he is largely correct that people were warned, you will not be able to stop people from protesting because unfortunately in this country, that's the only way people in government or in power hear what others have to say. It doesn't mean it has to be violent. It doesn't mean it has to be violent, but this is the way people listen, people in power listen generally in our culture. That said, it is quite dangerous to see a country like Russia. And let me clarify this. it would have been a little bit different if you saw the Benin Republic flag or the Niger Republic flag, or let's even say the Ghanaian. And in the Russian flag in a zone like Kaduna that is close enough to Niger Republic and some of the Sahel states that have Russian influence is a little bit worrisome. I'm saying that in Nigerian perspective. I am a Nigerian first of all. That said, immediately I say that I will look very well at images. You see that these were mostly kids. They were mostly teenagers who were carrying those flags. I am not even sure they know the repercussions or the real meanings of the flags they are carrying. They are just doing something that they were giving flags to carry. They are chanting. Let me even correct one wrong perception. I think the name of the protest itself was wrong. If you come out at this time to say end bad governance, a lot of people who are not educated enough will understand the governance, because bad will just be chopped up in that word. And this will give rise to what we are seeing that looks more like an uprising against the current government, when people are supposed to be saying there is against hunger in general. A lot of the things that brought us here have started well before this government. So in the title of the protest itself, there was something that shocked me initially when I saw the protest. It was stating end bad governance. And if it's just enough for us to leave the studio, and end bad governance will sound like end governance. And that in itself is not allowed by law. It's like calling for an uprising. But the fact that carrying a flag, as much as I know, is nothing constitutionally against it in Nigeria for now. It is the inciting of people that want to overthrow a government that is illegal and is treasonable. So yes, from a security perspective, I found it worrisome. I was very uncomfortable. But because I know the meaning, I know that we're talking of a country that has a lot of its soldiers now in West Africa. And so it's looking like as if we're calling on Russia to come and do what they're doing in Ukraine. That's what it looks like from a security perspective. But honestly, I think most of the kids you're seeing don't know what that Russian flag represents and don't know the real meaning. So the government will have to be careful while them to understand that there was a lot of lack of education more than call for secession.
All right, let me come back to you, Terence. Now, on this program, before the protest, I remember we had the police force chief discuss the arrangements on ground. And part of what I remember asking him that day is that there's intelligence as regards the protest being hijacked by mercenaries. He did confirm that. And when I tried to ask further questions as regards if he could give details, he declined, saying it was classified. So my question is, I mean, the government was pretty much abreast that this protest will be infiltrated. What did the government do about it? And then number two, there's a large perception that many of those that were carrying these flags were pretty much uneducated. How be that being true? I've seen videos where some of them, carrying the flag, spoke fluently and explained the reason. One of such videos I saw just before the commencement of the show, the person explained that the reason why they are brandishing that flag is because Nigeria is pretty much affiliated with capitalist countries and organizations, mentioning the IMF and saying that most of all these organizations or the government does the bidding of the capitalist, hence maybe communism, might just be a way to go. This doesn't sound like somebody who wouldn't go to school. It sounded like someone who actually was aware of what he was doing. So my question to you is this. Number one, what did the government do about this when it, of course, had full knowledge in terms of intel? And then number two, we know that some arrests have been made. What do you know so far? What has the government discovered?
Thank you very much for that question. Well, we got the intel that they were going to infiltrate the protest, and we had always called that the people who have convened this protest should come out and dialogue with government. You and I are aware that until the day of this protest, it was still a faceless organization, and XYZ, and so it was difficult for us to dialogue, and that is why the government resorted to mobilizing community leaders, religious leaders, youth organizations, traditional rulers. We dialogue with almost everybody to give reasons why there is no need for a protest to hold in this country, because we have gotten the intel, but the organizers refuse to come forth and dialogue with government. And so it became a challenge. But we foresaw all these things coming. And as a government and a responsible government, we have to engage the stakeholders to be able to stop this. Where they insisted on coming out and to protest, we all saw what happened. We commend the patriotic Nigerians that were able to hold themselves and not come out and stay back, and was able to help the government to mobilize within their communities so that these issues will not escalate. We've already mourned with those that lost their life. We've commiserated with them as a responsible government.
And we have
Terrace,
admitted that the issue is not even about the protest itself. The issue has to do with the intel about the infiltration of the protest. What was done with that intel?
Yeah, but I told you that when we got the intel, we couldn't get the organizers. We have to engage with community leaders, traditional rulers, youth organizations. You saw the town hall meetings that were going on in this country before the protest commenced. And so that was what we were able to do, because we engaged the stakeholders and we informed them about the intel that we had and why we don't want the protest to hold. And they insisted on going on to hold the protest, and we all saw what came out. And so we did the best we could as a government, but you cannot go and control everybody not to come out. Those that came out to express themselves have the constitutional right to express themselves. We deployed security to be able to make sure that they were safe and nobody came to infiltrate and XYZ. But there's a limit to which you can go when criminals want to come and infiltrate an organized protest or something. So that was what we had on our hand. The issue of the flag, like I told you, we saw it, and the government is doing everything within the law and consulting with the relevant agencies to make an official statement. It is not in my place to make a statement regarding the issue of that flag.
All right, let me leave you for a moment, Terrace. Let me go to Alex. Alex, please feel free to react, but particularly I'd like you to stay on the flag itself and the ideology, which I of course stated, that some Nigerians are beginning to run on, talking about, capitalism and communism right here. Are we looking at something maybe sinister or even deeper?
You just hit the nail on the word. It is, of course, sinister. But let us be clear here. What is going on is that in democracy going on around West Africa. It's not just Nigeria. Let us not single ourselves out. If you single ourselves out, we will get the analysis wrong. You can see that the West African countries are either going towards a kind of socialism or actually purely into military rule. So it is obvious that we will have a bit of a dovetail situation coming into the northern part of Nigeria, which are directly in contact with Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, Mali, and so on. You notice that in the southern part of Nigeria, these things did not occur. What people are seeing, don't forget, a group of mercenaries are actually in the Sahel, helping some of these countries to fight terrorism. Remember, the northern countries in Nigeria, northern states in Nigeria, are the ones that have suffered terrorism the most, at least of recent, in terms of Boko Haram and ISWAP. So there is a bit of a cause and effect. You have to look at it well. It is beyond the protest itself. The essay was quite correct. The protest has been hijacked. But we must state here that all the protests in Nigeria, since I was an adult, have been hijacked. Even Ali must go and all that. It is because the educational level of Nigerians, the civic education I'm talking about, has not reached that level where we will separate what we are looking for from what actually happens on ground. This protest was supposed to be about hunger and hardship. Very quickly, it turned into political. But the same thing happened with NSAS. NSAS was supposed to be about stopping police brutality. Very quickly, even after the Buhari administration had announced that SARS was disbanded, people remained, if you remember, people remained on the streets and started asking that the government must fall down. This is something we will always have to deal with. And I want to say categorically that the police and the government in general handled it well. When I mean in terms of the repercussions, in terms of what followed. Maybe they did not handle it well in terms of communication initially, but once the protest started, it was handled well. There are fewer damages, fewer people that were killed, and the protest more or less took place. The question is, has the government had what the people are saying? What is going to happen next? Because these things can still happen again. So back to the flags, I still say there is a little bit of civic irresponsibility and poor education that is taking place here. You'd not see anybody with the Russian flag in your state or in those states or in Akwa Ibom, yet there were protests. So obviously, education comes back to it. Do not single out that one that was speaking good English, who could have been the one championing these guys, to the young guys we saw that were carrying flags, that I bet you, if you ask them which country's flag they were carrying, they would not know.
All right, let me leave you gentlemen for a moment. We need to go on a quick break. When we return, of course, we will be looking at security and protest management, particularly for all their take-ons and takeaways. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. This is still Politics HQ on News Central Television. And of course, we are discussing matters arising on the End Bad Governance protest, particularly the brandishing of foreign flags, that we've seen in videos, in some parts of the country during the protest. I still have my guests with me. Alex Okonkwo is a security analyst joining virtually from Lagos, and Terrace Kuanum is the special advisor to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation on Public Affairs, and he joins virtually from Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with me. Now, Mr. Kuanum, let me come to you. Now, the event, of course, also shows or revealed the need for security agencies, to balance maintaining order without, of course, disrespecting the rights of peaceful protest, particularly on the part of citizens. We saw during this protest where some security agencies, took it overboard in terms of abuse. Pretty much unfortunate. I mean, this is not the first time, even if we go as far back as the NSAS protest too, there was a lot of these reports. And this brings to the fore again the issue of protest management in the country. I'd like your reaction to that. Are we moving forward? What should be done, particularly on the part of government, to ensure that in terms of civil interaction on days like this, in events like this, we have little or no casualties at all?
Thank you very much. I think for the issue of this protest, just like the president directed that the police were supposed to be professional, the security agencies were supposed to be professional, but we had some issues, like in Abuja, where there was a court order that restricted the protest to be within the Moshood Abiola Stadium. Even though the protesters insisted to stay outside and block the road in Moshood Stadium, they were guided professionally and nobody was attacked. Where we had skirmishes were those infiltrators that insisted to go to and open the Eagle Square.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. In that same Abuja, at that MKO Stadium, protesters that conveyed there were tear gassed. We captured that live on TV. Our reporter was, had his fair dose of tear gas at the stadium.
You would have allowed me to land. On the first day of the protest at the stadium, no one was attacked. The people that had issues with the security agencies were the people that insisted to break into the Eagle Square. That was the issue. The issue you are talking about at the Moshood Abiola Stadium were the people that came the second day, and the people that came on the first day, their leadership were identified by the security agencies, and they were being guided by their lawyer. Now, on the second day, a different group appeared. It wasn't the first group that appeared. And at this point, there were skirmishes of invaders in Kano, in Yobe, in Borunu, and XYZ. And so when strange people appeared on the second day, we needed to protect the facilities that we had around there.
But is it about familiar faces now, or the fact that they are just peaceful protesters?
The security insisted that the leadership that was interacted with them must identify them. And the leadership refused to identify them. At that point, that was where there was a challenge.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is the issue about identifying familiar faces as protesters, or the fact that they just came as peaceful individuals, as Nigerians, who just want their voices to be heard, and they were tear gassed?
No, it is wrong. Our duty is to protect life and property first as a government. And by the second day, we had lost 10 people across the country because of hijack of this protest. So you cannot just accept anybody at that point.
But they were peaceful.
To come and be able to gather together and begin to cause damage to life and property. And so we insisted that since the leadership was identified on the first day, the leadership must lead the protest, because in the end we were going to dialogue with them.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Your reporters were there when Deji Adeyanju and the leaders of that protest addressed the nation with the commissioner of police in Abuja. And they told us they were going to follow the rules based on the injunction that was available.
But I'm sorry, but it's the same government that said that the protesters were largely faceless. I'm getting at somewhere.
In the name of protest, that was why they had issues with the security.
All right. I want to believe the issue here, because, for rules of engagement on days like this, if the people are peaceful, then why should they be tear gassed? Because having interviews with security forces, they said the energy or the force you give is what they react to it. So many Nigerians are beginning to ask that, why, for instance, at the MKO Stadium, which of course is the court-appointed venue, people converged there, they were peaceful and just saying, look, please, the government, you need to listen to us. They still ended up being tear gassed. We also had cases of, in other parts of the country, but let me leave you for a moment. I would like to take, Alex, your thoughts on this. Protest management, so far, are we moving forward, or are we just regressing in this?
Okay, let me balance this by saying, first, you have to understand it is his role to defend what they have tried to or managed to do perfectly. There's nothing wrong with that. The second thing I would say very quickly is that I believe we have progressed based on other kind of protests that we've had in the past, like the June 12, like the Against Structural Adjustment Program, and the recent NSAS. We have progressed. The police is they're more experienced, they have more intelligence, and they work better with the civilian society. And you can see that the army stayed pretty much out of it, except for the CDS that once in a while came to talk in a very civil and a very political situation, which it shouldn't have done. Now, in terms of strategy on ground, the first mistake was to even go for court injunctions. A lot of states went for that. How do you tell people that want to protest that you're going to tell them by court judgment?
Okay, Alex, I'm sorry, I understand that. Alex, if you can hear me, I sincerely apologize for interrupting you, but I understand that we have a breaking story right now. Just a quick one. Of course, the U.S. presidential candidate for the Republican Party, Donald Trump, holds a news conference at Mar-a-Lago in the United States. We just want to bring you live feeds, and then we'll return. Stay with us.